So we have some difficult questions that we need to ask ourselves when using tests in EAP contexts. And they're to do with the burden of expectation. Are we tempted to lay too great a burden of expectation on a particular test? What is it realistic for us to expect in terms of score interpretation? People often say to me, the IELTS speaking score tells me nothing. And so I said, well, what would you expect a 15-minute face-to-face speaking test to be able to tell you about somebody's ability? And it's a question they've perhaps not thought about. And it's always worth thinking about that question in relation to what you think a score is telling you. And we need to ask ourselves, what are the other sources of useful evidence that could or should be used alongside the test results? And then there's a question which moves us on into the future. How might test design need to evolve to meet changing requirements, processes, and contexts in higher education? So just a couple of things to say about, as we approach the future, opportunities and caveats in relation to emerging trends, I think. There's definitely an emergent nature to academic literacies. The way I studied as an undergraduate is not the way my daughters studied as undergraduates, and it will not be the way my grandchildren study. They are no longer confined by presentation mode or physical location because they live, study, and work in a digital age. And this rapid growth of digitization, the development of standardized online courses, MOOCs, etc., the use of social media, the use of cooperative learning networks and online learning management systems, tablets, smartphones, etc., mean that the library in your university department is no longer the place you go to read academic books or journals. I'm a bit like Alex. I love the stuff in my hand rather than the stuff on the screen, but then that reflects my age. So we are going to need to reshape assessment tools to harness new technologies and to reflect the changing nature of academic literacy, which is rapidly changing. So far, I don't think the assessment world has done a very great job. I think it's sought probably to convert paper and pencil tests to a computer-based format, but we're not actually harnessing some of the other options, the opportunity for more integrated task formats, the opportunity to use multimedia, domain-specific, and also to collect big data from and about learners so that there can be an increasing personalization of learning and assessment and an integration of the two. And there are lots of research questions we need to ask and explore. And this is something that ELT teachers and tutors can be involved in. It's not just down to researchers. Questions of test format comparability, questions of blending word and image. Alongside that, I would put a number of ethical considerations, particularly to do with personal data. We can now gather biometric information on our test takers. We can actually record through eye tracking their eye movements when they read. We can actually record their keystroke logging when they write an assignment. But that's all their data. And there is a question over the extent to which we need to develop an ethical milieu for working out how to use that data that's captured in a responsible and ethical way. And then there's an interesting question of artificial intelligence and cyber-physical combinations, which is a bit Brave New Worldy, actually. But it just shows you that things change. This is 3 covers from 1984. You can see how those have changed. And the same is true of every other aspect of life. If you want to ask me about getting lunch at Cambridge Assessment and how it's changed since 1978, I can tell you afterwards. I want to return to Cyril to close. Cyril had an abiding interest in history, and one of his favourite quotes was this: "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven." And each season brings with it innovation and challenge, and that's one of the things that we face as English language tutors, teachers, teacher trainers, testers, whatever. And I'm grateful to Cyril for having started me down on this path. He's sadly missed, but fondly remembered. Thank you very much.